Hello, I'm Dilip Radhakrishnan. I'm a group product manager with the Microsoft Intune service.
And I'm Lance Crandall. I'm a principal product manager on the Intune team as well.
In this session, Lance and I are going to provide a brief overview of Microsoft's new advanced management features in Intune service. I'll talk about what drove the need for this product and what are the components of this suite. And Lance will do a set of demos that illustrates the capabilities of these features. Microsoft Intune is a market leader in the unified endpoint management market. Intune today provides comprehensive endpoint management and security for PCs, iOS, Android, Macs, and Linux devices as well. So we went and asked our customers what are the other pain points that they want us to address. Our customers told us that they wanted Microsoft to address a set of key scenarios where they had to supplement Intune with other custom solutions. For example, when COVID lockdown started, almost all our customers had their users moving to remote work overnight. IT teams were remote as well. They found it very challenging to support remote users and the help desk costs spiked. So they wanted Microsoft to offer a true cloud-based remote help service. Similarly, customers wanted us to address other problems like providing access to on-prem line of business apps from their personal BYOD, iOS, Android devices. Other customers want us to address problems around third-party applications being patched. Today, when customers address these problems with add-on solutions, they deal with multiple challenges. One, there is overhead of multiple admin consoles. So they have to switch between multiple consoles to get the basic workflows done. They also need to deploy additional agents on endpoints that impacts the end user experience because it slows down the overall performance of those devices. And they also express concerns about security vulnerabilities in some of these solutions. So what they wanted was a more integrated first-party solution from Microsoft. We are excited to announce new advanced management features in Intune, where we bring together a set of critical endpoint management and security services into a single console. It's a suite of 6 solutions that bring together mission-critical management and security tools into a single cloud-based console. This helps our customers to reduce their cost of ownership, increases the security, and it also provides better end-user experiences. So these solutions include a secure remote help solution so that you can remotely connect and troubleshoot your PCs, Macs, iOS, and Android devices. So the second solution enables you to access your line of business apps from an unmanaged bring your own mobile device. A third solution helps you to make sure that your applications, the third-party apps running on your devices are patched and up to date. So this will make sure that any vulnerabilities in those applications are automatically remediated. The Intune Premium Suite also includes a solution that will allow you to run your users with just standard user privileges. One of the main security concerns our customers had was to make sure that they don't give local admin privileges to their end users. But when they do that, it breaks a set of line of business apps or the end user experience. So what we'll offer through the Microsoft Endpoint Privilege Management solution is to just-in-time elevation of applications without having to give local admin privileges to the user. Another use case that our customers wanted to address was to move the on-prem PKI workload to the cloud. They want a simple cloud-based solution to deploy certificates for VPN and Wi-Fi services on their devices directly from the cloud without requiring on-premise infrastructure. And last but not least, they also wanted us to invest in a solution that will enable you to have better end user experiences and optimize the end user experiences based on the analytics that we offer from Intune service. Now, Lance will show a set of demos that illustrates these Intune premium capabilities.
Thanks, Dilip. I'm really excited to talk about 3 of the advanced management solutions that we have. The first one I'll talk about is remote help. Then I'll talk about endpoint privilege management. And lastly, we'll talk about Tunnel for mobile application management. So let's dive into remote help. So first, let's talk about remote help. As you know, during COVID, the number of remote workers skyrocketed as they moved from the corporate office back to their home to be able to do the work that they needed to do. And at the same time, that didn't mean that they stopped having problems. So these problems still need to be addressed by help desk, and these users needed to get help anywhere that they were. And they also needed help on different platforms that they used. So that could have been Windows, it could have been iOS, Android, or even their Mac devices. And they also need support for when they're present on the device, or you can think about a lab scenario where it may have been an unattended scenario where we needed to provide that support. And really what customers were asking for is a first-party SaaS-based solution that was integrated with Microsoft 365, provided by Microsoft to help them support the users wherever they were. So with that, we launched Remote Help back in April of 2022. And the goals of this were that first, it would be a cloud-based solution that was secure, and it would help users on Windows desktops. So it didn't matter if they were on an enrolled device or an unenrolled device, their help desk could help them be successful and get their problems resolved quickly. The next thing that we wanted to do was add role-based access control through Microsoft Intune. So what this would do is it would allow administrators to configure different tiers of help desk. So for example, tier 1 help desk, tier 2, tier 3 is very common in enterprises. And that would allow them to say, hey, my tier 1 can have view-only control, whereas maybe my tier 3 can have full control on those devices. Solve some of the issues that they're facing, such as uninstalling and reinstalling an application, whereas help desk may have those rights. And so now with Remote Help, you can interact with that user access control prompt, enter your alternate credentials that have administrative rights, and help the user become productive quickly. So the next thing that we wanted to add was compliance warnings that are part of the Microsoft 365 integration that we have. So as you know, through Microsoft Intune, you can set up a compliance policy for a specific device, and we'll detect what the security status is. So that could be things like BitLocker being enabled. It can also be things like Microsoft Defender risk scores on that device. So when a helper actually connects to a sharer's device, we'll show the helper if that device is non-compliant. And the benefit of that is that now the helper is more aware of what's happening on that device, and they can, one, help that user to become compliant, or two, if it's a security issue, they can actually escalate that to their security team so that they can do the proper analysis on that device. So giving that warning up front really helps to increase the security of the helper's interaction with that sharer's device. The next thing is that we really wanted to add session reporting so that you can get more information about who helped whom, when, and on what device. And that can be used for things like auditing and different things to determine. The next thing is building trust. So as you're having someone connect to your device, that's kind of a really personal thing that we want to make sure that the right people are connecting to the right devices. And so as this interaction is happening between help desk and share, before they actually show the device, we'll show information from Azure Active Directory for both parties, including the picture, company name, the user's name, their title, and also the verified domain. And that can really help provide strong authentication through Azure AD so that those people trust each other. So the last thing is that this is available today, as I mentioned, this GA'd back in April. And so this is available for you today to use as part of a trial, or you can actually purchase licenses to start taking advantage of Remote Help today for Windows. So now I'm going to show you a demo of what this looks like. So picture a scenario where Daniela is a help desk person, and she is trying to help a remote user who's working from home. And in this case, it's going to be Steve Dispenza. And in this scenario, what we're going to do is show that Steve is having some issues with Windows Media Player where he's not actually able to get any sound to play. And so Danielle is going to sign into his device by creating this connection through Remote Help, and then she will be able to help him resolve this issue that he's having with Windows Media Player. So the first thing that you'll see is a screen here where Danielle is signed into the Remote Help application, and what she will do is get a security code. So here you can see what the code is, and she's going to provide this to Steve to help create that session. On Steve's device, he enters that code, and that's what makes the connection. So now Daniela sees information about Steve, as we mentioned, like his title, the company, email address, etc., and she's going to request full control. Steve on his side is going to see information about Daniela and accept that request. Now here we can see that the device isn't compliant with the company's policy, and so Daniela is presented with a message that informs her that this device is not compliant with policy, and she can also see some new information by clicking a link about why that device isn't compliant. And so here, as she drills into the device compliance for this device, she can see that encryption is not enabled for this device. So she determines that, this is an acceptable risk for her, and so she's going to continue on with the session and say, okay. So now the next thing that's going to happen is that she's going to start to troubleshoot that Windows Media Player issue that Steve's been facing. And so here, what she's going to do is request rights through the user account control prompt to access this device. So she'll enter her alternate credentials, which have admin rights, to launch PowerShell. And she has a PowerShell script that will help to uninstall and reinstall Windows Media Player. And then when she launches Media Player now, she's able to hear a ding on that device because she can now hear the audio from Steve's device. And she's able to validate that the problem was completed. And so now Steve is up and running and he can successfully hear audio on that device. So all of this happened remotely over the cloud and did not require any infrastructure to be set up by Daniela's organization. So now I want to talk a little bit about what's coming for remote help for Windows. So the first thing is, as we go to the roadmap section, is that we're going to add a full-featured chat functionality. So right now, you can enter a specific instruction through remote help to the other party, but it does not keep a history. And so we'll be adding this capability that allows you to see the history of the different chats that you've been having, just like you'd expect from a chat feature. The next thing is that we're making some enhancements to annotation. So annotation is when you are able to draw things on the screen. That exists today in remote help, but what we're adding is a laser pointer, so you can actually help the user to see what they need to do or what they need to click on. Those can be used for things like training or having the user take action on something. It makes that much easier to see and use on the device. Another thing that we're adding is unattended sessions. And so this is where you may have a scenario where you have a shared device that's sitting in a lab somewhere where there is no user present, but you need to resolve an issue on that device. So you'll be able to sign into that device remotely, even when a user is not present, to accept that session and then complete whatever tasks are required to get that device up and running quickly. The next thing that we're adding very soon is the ability for a helper to hear the sharer's audio. So again, just like the demo we showed on the previous section, that allows you to actually solve sound issues that may be happening on that user's device. The next thing is that we'll be adding full conditional access rights. And so, for example, you'll be able to go create a conditional access policy for remote help and target that with conditional access policies for things such as enforcing MFA if you're not on the corporate network. That's one example of what you could do there. The next thing is being able to add to copy and paste text directly to and from the session. So let's say you had a command you needed to run, like that PowerShell command in the demo we just showed. Instead of having to go through a chat experience, you can actually just treat it as if it's your own desktop and copy and paste that directly into the window. The next thing is similar. So for file transfer, you can copy to and from the session without having to go through, say, OneDrive for Business or something like that. And then we just showed as well in the previous demo around enhanced compliance messages. So what that means is that you were able to not only see that that device wasn't compliant, but click a link which took you to the device itself in the Intune console, and you could see why it wasn't compliant. And that can help you make a better informed security decision as you're helping users on that device. And then last thing that we're adding is the ability to go into the Intune console and launch a session seamlessly on a particular device. So now the end user will see a notification, just like they would with a Teams notification. They can click that and it will launch them directly into the session with a helper, which makes it a much more seamless time to integration. So all of these things will be coming in the next 6 to 9 months, and we're looking forward to adding these capabilities to make your experience much better with remote help. So the other thing that we're adding for remote help is remote help for Android. So we talked about the importance of cross-platform support for remote help, and Android is the first one where we're adding that capability. And so our initial goal here is to support frontline workers, and this specifically for Android enterprise dedicated devices. And so that's the initial target here. So you can picture a frontline worker as someone that's in a store, like a store associate that picks up a shared device at the beginning of their shift and uses that in the shift. But often those devices can have problems, and often users aren't technical enough to help resolve those particular issues to get the device back up and running. So we're adding this capability, which will have all the capabilities you can see here, such as full control, view screen, attended, unattended, etc. We'll tie that in, just like we did with remote help for Windows, to things like strong authentication, role-based access control, reporting, etc. So you'll have that same experience on these Android enterprise dedicated devices to better support your workforce. And this is coming in private preview in Q4, so we're really excited about this. So now let me show you a demo of what the Android remote help experience will look like. So we're going to go into the Intune console, and we're going to go to the All Devices view and pick the device that's having an issue. Once we go into that device, we'll say New Remote Assistant Session, and then we'll request unattended control in this particular case because no user is sitting on the device. So what this will do is it will launch an integrated experience in the Intune console that now is allowing you to remotely utilize that device and help that device without actually needing to be present or have a user present on that device. So here we can see the managed home screen, and we'll be asked to sign in with our organizational credentials, and that gets us into the device just as if we were sitting there. So the first thing I'll do is I'll launch Teams, and you'll see that is going to seamlessly sign me into Teams because it's all using single sign-on. I can use the controls at the top, which are Android specific on this remote assistant session, and now go back to the home screen. I can launch Power Apps, and you can see that, again, that seamlessly signs in as well. Again, using the controls at the top, I can easily go back to the home screen. So those are mimicking the hardware buttons. And then I can also now sign out of this device completely, which would sign me out of all the applications that I was using and get me back to that managed home screen for that user. You can see I can also power off the device or restart the device if I need to and have all of those controls. So as you can see, this will make it very easy for your help desk to help users who are on these frontline worker Android enterprise dedicated devices so they can get those devices back up and running quickly. The next thing that we're going to talk about is endpoint privilege management. So endpoint privilege management is something that's meant to help us with some scenarios that are very common in enterprises where often on Windows PCs, enterprises want to make sure that their users are standard users, and standard users don't have admin rights. And the reason why they do this is for security and stability. So they want to make sure that end users are not able to install things that could make their device less secure, like malware, but they also want to make sure that the device is stable and you're not installing things that, even if they don't have malware, could slow down your PC and impact your productivity. But users, on the other hand, also have a challenge here because often there are critical things that they need to install on their own, such as peripherals like printers, and they're unable to do this. So what endpoint privilege management strives to do is allow admins to have this ability to make their users standard users, but also give them the ability to have a more easy way to elevate on those devices for actions that they approve. And those can be all policy-based. So that's really the intent of what this is policy-based elevation on devices that's kind of just in time. So there's three different elevation experiences that endpoint privilege management will provide. The first one is a zero friction option. And what this means is that end users for the applications or processes that you've defined can launch those and it auto elevates them to admin for just that process. And they don't see any messages or anything. It just automatically elevates and they're able to complete the action. Then there's user confirmed where they see a similar experience to what they had with user account control, but it also can have different levels of confirmation. So what that means is you can have a business justification that you require. They have to enter their credentials again before they're able to actually elevate. Support approved is kind of what it sounds like, where there may be a specific action that a user wants to perform, but they also require the support organization or your admins to approve that action in advance. So that's what this would do, is allow anything outside of policy to now require this support approval. So as we look at how we would roll this out, the first thing you're going to do is enable the feature at the tenant level, and then you can have two different options. First, you can just enable it and start using it, or you can have an audit mode, which will allow you to kind of see what would happen if you had started to enforce policies. The next thing you'll do is create a policy, and this policy will have different controls over how you want to handle different EXEs or processes that are running on that device, and if you want those to be the support approved or auto elevate, etc. And then the last thing is just monitoring your environment for different scenarios that have happened and determine what the reporting is for things that have happened. And if you see changes that need to be made to either loosen things up or make things tighter, you can implement those back in the policies that you've created previously. So now I'm going to walk through some screenshots of what this experience will look like. So the first thing is that you're going to go into the Intune console and you're going to create a new policy. And there's two different types of policies. One is kind of default settings, and the second one is specific rules. The next thing is around rules. So this is where we really get into the details of how this elevation policy will work. So we're going to create a new rule here, and you can see that we're going to do this one for Acrobat specifically. When I go down to the rule conditions, you can see that applies to can be either all users that are on a specific targeted device or only for the primary user of that device. In this case, I'm going to pick primary user only. And then the elevation type is super important here as well. So again, this is where I pick whether support needs to approve each of these requests, or if they will automatically be approved for the user and they don't actually see any messages, it just happens and auto elevates them, etc. As we go down, you can say, like, I want additional validation, like I want them to do multi-factor authentication or enter a business justification. And this is something that will appear to the end user where they need to enter the information you specify here before the elevation can occur. Next, we're going to enter information about the file itself. So you can specify acquired by a certificate or a specific publisher. I can specify individual files, like you can see the path here for the publisher for the Acrobat EXE that I used as a reference file. And then that's how I finish creating my policies here. And so as I create more and more of these policies, this allows my users to do more and more things based on the rules that I've set up, even if they're a standard user. So now if we flip over to a user's device that's targeted by one of these policies, you can see that if I right click this, I have my normal run as administrator option at the top, but I see a new option here that says run with elevated access. So this is what users would click. And then at that point, they will see information here around however I've set this up. Now I had a rule that said auto in this case, and so it'll just kind of like automatically allow me to elevate without requiring additional authentication or justification. And now I'm elevated for just this specific action and this specific application, which in this case was, the Acrobat application per my rule. So this allows companies to, maintain that level of security and stability in their environment by making their users standard users, but gives them an easy way to create policies that allows their users to also have the freedom that they need to do specific actions, such as install printers, install specific applications that require admin rights on their device. So the last thing that we're going to talk about today is Tunnel for mobile application management. So this is a solution that ties into Microsoft Tunnel, which is a solution that we've had in market for a couple years. So Tunnel is a first-party VPN solution that allows remote access to on-premises resources from iOS and Android devices. We made really good progress on Tunnel in 2022. So we've actually fully GA'd the product across iOS and Android. We also saw a really great opportunity to combine security and connectivity in the same application. And so on iOS and Android, we've combined Defender and Tunnel in the same application so that you can have that flexibility, and that's also GA'd. We've added some capabilities to improve performance, such as giving you the ability to disable UDP if that's something that you want. And then we've also given abilities to give you more granular control over the Tunnel server itself so that you can fine-tune the performance values that you want to have for Tunnel. But as we've talked to customers, we've also determined that, this is great for MDM enrolled devices, but they also have a lot of scenarios where they have unenrolled devices where users are bringing their own devices to work and they need to be productive on those devices to access on-premises apps and resources. And as we've talked to customers about what their requirements were for this, they wanted to make sure this was a seamless solution for end users. So they didn't want to have a lot of, extra effort to connect to their on-premises resources. They just wanted to be able to launch apps and launch specific apps and have those connect back without a lot of effort. We also wanted to make sure that since this is a personal device, that we wanted to separate personal and corporate traffic so that the end user could feel, secure that all of their traffic was not being sent back to their company. Then we also wanted to make sure that the data that's being accessed is protected by app protection policies. So even if I'm accessing something from my personal device, it could be very sensitive, and we want to make sure that's not copied to, say, Facebook or Dropbox, and that's what app protection policies provide. Then lastly, Edge is super important because the majority of scenarios for accessing on-premises apps and resources is through Edge and accessing intranet sites. And so one of the requirements that we heard is that while Edge is dual identity, meaning you can sign in with a personal account as well as a corporate account, we only wanted to send traffic when you're signed in with a corporate account. So if I sign out and sign back in with my personal account, the VPN is stopped and I can browse, my own set of privacy, to whatever sites I want. Whereas if I am signed in with my corporate account, now the VPN starts up and I'm able to connect to those on-premises resources. So there's a couple of ways that we implemented this. On iOS, we created an SDK that can be integrated with your line of business apps. This also requires the MAM SDK so that you can get those app protection policies, and it really only lights up that VPN for specific apps where that SDK is integrated. Now, we are integrating this with Edge, like I mentioned, and so that will be available at GA to allow you to browse intranet sites from Edge. On Android, we have a little bit more flexibility as far as the platform. And so with that, what we have is the Tunnel application and the MAM SDK will be required to get access to those on-premises resources, but there's not an additional Tunnel-specific SDK that you need to integrate with your applications. It also has the ability to auto-start the VPN. So when you sign in and launch one of these applications, the VPN can start up automatically without needing to go to the Tunnel application and start that connection. And again, this is per app specific, so this is not full device VPN. So all of the things that you'd expect from the Tunnel application will be available for this. So, modern authentication to sign in if needed, and also using single sign-on when possible, having conditional access, split tunneling, proxy support, etc. And the other great thing is that these Tunnel configuration is not hard-coded into the application. And so, if you need to make a change, like maybe you needed to go to a different Tunnel site, for example, all of that is dynamically pulled down from Intune to the applications that are requesting that information ad hoc. And so it's all very dynamic. So we made a lot of progress in 2022 for MAM Tunnel. So we're in the middle of a private preview on Android, supporting Edge and line of business app supports. And we're planning to have a public preview of the Android integration in November for everyone. We're also looking at in the process of doing an iOS Tunnel SDK private preview right now with a couple of customers. And so we're making really good progress on that and getting good feedback from those customers. We have our Edge integration on iOS that's occurring right now. And that integration is also almost complete. And so we'll have that ready at GA. And then our target for GA for iOS and Android is January of 2023. So we're getting very close here. We're very excited. A lot of customers are asking about this. Now, there's one piece that will come post GA in February, and this is around trusted root search support. So often companies that have intranet sites have issued a TLS certificate from an internal CA. And so that means it's not publicly trusted automatically on any of the devices that you have. So for you to not get scary messages for your end users when they're connecting to these sites, we need to make sure that the trusted root certs are available on that device so that it is a trusted TLS certificate when you're doing that connection. So with that, we are adding that support right now. That's going to come in slightly after our GA target, but that will be available in February on both platforms. So for now, I'm going to do a quick demo of the support that we have for Tunnel for MAM. So the first thing that I'm going to do is go to the Intune console, and I'm going to create an app configuration policy. Since it's app configuration policies, it will allow us on both iOS and Android to specify the applications that we want, as well as the tunnel configuration. So I'm going to click Add, and then I'm going to pick Managed Apps because this is for unenrolled devices. I'll give it a name. For target the policy to apps, I'm going to specify for Android, I need to specify the Defender application. So I'm going to pick that one from the store. And that's only required for Android since we're using that as part of the MAM solution. And then I can also pick custom applications. In this case, I'm going to have a line of business application that I want for iOS specifically. So I'm going to specify that bundle ID for my line of business app for iOS. We'll select that. And then on the next screen, you'll see there's a new section that will be available during public preview in GA called Microsoft Tunnel Settings. So in this case, I want to use that for these applications. So I'll say yes. I'm going to give it a connection name. And then I'm going to specify my tunnel site, which contains all the information needed on how the client can connect to that tunnel endpoint. So for Android, I do need to specify the applications that I want to be associated with this VPN here. And so for here, I'm going to actually pick Edge. So we'll select that, and then I'm not going to add any custom Android applications here just for the sake of this demo. And I can also enter proxy information as well if I have that in my organization. So we're going to finish completing the policy. We'll assign this to all users. And now I have done everything that I need to do on the Intune side to make this policy live for my users. So now we're going to jump to an iOS device. And I'm going to go to Safari, which is not integrated with the RSDK, and I'm going to try to access a local site. And as you can see, that didn't work. So now I'm going to launch the custom application that I targeted with my policy, and you can see that it's seamlessly signing me in to that application and creating the tunnel gateway. And now if I enter, this happens to have a web view. Now if I enter that information, you can see that I was able to successfully launch it. So it was only for the application that I specified. Now if I jump over to Android, I'll have kind of a similar experience. So you can see that I have the Defender application on the device. I also have Edge. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to launch Edge since that was targeted by my policy, and you can see that it's seamlessly connected to Tunnel very, very quickly. And so here what I'll do is I'm going to launch the contoso.udc, which is the on-prem site that I have, and you can see that that's successfully connected. Now, it did that because I'm signed in with my corporate account. But now if I sign out and then I sign back in with a personal account, you saw that it disconnected. And now if I try to connect that in my personal context in Edge, you can see that that failed. And so again, this is all about data protection where we can give the user access to the things that they need on your corporate network, but only when they're signed in with their corporate account and not when they're signed in with their personal account. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dilip to talk about some of the timelines that we have.
Thank you, Lance. We in the Intune team are heavily investing in these advanced management features. We shipped Windows Remote Help last quarter, and this quarter we will have a preview of Android Remote Help. In Q1 2023, we will have Tunnel for mobile application management and endpoint privilege management. The following quarters, we'll have previews for analytics and the cloud PKI solutions. We look forward to having you try these features by participating in the previews. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to hearing your feedback.